Sunshine and good health. Yes. Love that.
Yay.
All right.
Courtney McKee. Oh,
Yes.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jen Ewell. I'm the director of the Women's Foundation of Montana. It's a statewide foundation all about creating a successful and prosperous future for women and girls in Montana. And we are also the hosts of the awesome Powerhouse Montana platform. So it's a statewide network, basically, of women and some great men too who support women from across the state of Montana. You can find it at www.powerhousemt.org. And today we are really excited because one of our great powerhouse groups, so there are different powerhouse groups across the state, Powerhouse Great Falls is going to be hosting the conversation today, and they're going to introduce our speakers. This is going to be super fun, casual, interactive conversation, and we're just really excited to be able to provide a space for all of you to connect with each other and for us all to learn and grow together. So thank you so much for being here. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Tracy McIntyre in Great Falls, and she's going to intro our speakers. Thanks.
And thank you everyone for coming. I'm so excited. I had this on my calendar and throughout the week was like, I can't wait. So it's really great. So cheers to everybody. A couple of us are having wine, and so we encourage that. If you would like to unwind with us tonight, feel free to. So Heather and I kind of started brainstorming out, there's my cohort, Heather, on this. We were brainstorming what we could do for Great Falls Powerhouse Group meeting, and we kind of ran it by a couple different ideas, and we started talking about who was inspiring us during the COVID shutdown and stuff. Susan and Chris Marie, I've known you guys for a while now, and I tried to figure out how many years, and honestly, I was like, it doesn't matter, because it seems like you've always kind of been part of my life, and I'm so grateful for you guys. And they started doing this new morning talk show, and it inspired me. I was watching it throughout the entire shutdown, and I have admired Susan and Chris Marie. I'm going to let them talk a little bit about themselves, but I want to say thank you guys for jumping on. When we sent the note saying, hey, what do you think about joining a Powerhouse session? They immediately responded and said, we're in, which I love about you guys, and just thank you. And with that, I'm going to let you guys go a little bit more into your background, and have fun, everyone, and enjoy tonight. It's a group of women coming together to support each other.
excellent. Here, I'll put up our little slide deck. Play. And, you know, we have slides, but we would love to hear from you, whether you want to put it in the chat or you want to speak out loud, whatever works for you. Because
And we do have, like, if we miss something, I think we have Heather and we have Tracy who are backing us up if you have questions, or if you know, anything comes up for you and you're like, wait a minute, I want to be heard. Give us a raised hand, because we want to engage with you as we do this. And
we also don't want to put you on the spot. So if you feel more comfortable chatting, then do that. If you want to chat out loud, we're great. So either,
okay.
And we just actually want to hear from you. If you could put in the chat, what is your biggest pain point right now? Dealing with your own stress, put a number 1 in the chat. Dealing with your relationship stress, whether that's at work or home, put a 2. Or dealing with business stress, put a 3. If you could give us some, just a simple number, no wrong answer, 3 business stress, yes. 3, keep going. We love it, seeing your answers. And it's not that you wouldn't be experiencing
couple
three threes, two twos, 1, 2, and 3.
I love it. Okay. Yeah.
I'm gonna move
There's
this.
another 2.
I'm trying to move this above so I can see.
It's interesting. We've been doing some of this now for a little while. And I would say when this all started, the answers were definitely more 1. And it moved to 2 as people were in usually tighter confinement with each other, or not seeing each other at all, only through Zoom. So, and then now we have gotten more consistently some 3s because we are opening back up. So even if you were sort of surviving, not knowing what would happen next, now you're beginning to have to find out, how are we going to do this? So it makes sense that 3 would start becoming a bigger, potentially a bigger issue.
Got it. Mostly 3 with a dash of 2. We had some different combinations here.
All right.
And when we asked some people to give your responses and ahead of time, and a lot of times people were saying, when will we be back to normal? What will normal be? Will my business survive? I'm okay now, but what about long-term? Can I get funding? Can I get resources? Can I keep my doors open and my people healthy? Can I sustain my clients? And I've lost confidence in myself because even if you're not engaging, it's kind of like, can I do this?
So one, we want to know, can you relate to some of those? Or if there's something else that's like fits you better, please add that in there as we go as well.
At the chat.
And because there are a few of these that have definitely been up for me. Some of them, it varies from day to day as well. Like, it's like, okay, one day it's one thing and the next day it's like, oh no, now I'm freaked out about whether I should wear a mask or not. So, it does go day to day.
And we are in a time of uncertainty. And what happens is there's conflict too, as we each try to find our path through this crisis. And everybody's got a different, wear a mask, don't wear a mask, go back to work, don't go back to work. And so it's really hard to figure out inside yourself what's right for me.
So the number one skill that we think you really have to work on going forward is the ability to live and respond in uncertainty, because we're not going back to where we were. It is a different world now. And even though we want and long for that expert that really is the one that has the answer, there isn't one expert that has an answer because we haven't really been on this particular road. Maybe in 1918, but let's face it, that was a different time of doing business than now.
When the Spanish flu happened.
And so it is a different world. And so we are traveling on a path that's not familiar. So there's a lot of uncertainty.
And what we realized, Susan and I, when this whole thing happened, we had speaking events, we had team offsites. You'll hear more about they all got canceled.
Yeah.
And what we first did is said, okay, well, we're going to start this. We didn't even know, somebody else coined it the new morning show. So we got on Facebook, we got on LinkedIn. We just started doing stuff to respond to what we heard, what we were feeling and what other people were feeling.
Well, and a big part of it was how to actually get ourselves out connected to people, because we were supposed to be sheltering in place, and who knew, what was happening, and how do we do that in a way that makes sense? And so the new morning show sort of fit that bill. That was on Facebook. And then the LinkedIn became, because we actually had a number of clients who were still doing a lot of business, but they hadn't ever been remote, spent this much time remotely. Or there were the ones who had been remote, but now they were like, oh my God, now everybody's remote. And this is just a disaster.
And my husband's remote and I don't want him to be remote. Can you go back to work, please?
That was actually some of the funnier things was, suddenly, we always say business is personal, but you still have business to do. Like, it's not like, it's not, but now business just got real personal for a lot of people because they are working out of their own homes and they're doing it very differently. So there's all sorts of parts of this that bring up uncertainty.
And so today we're going to talk about shifting from surviving to thriving, how to deal with uncertainty, and leveraging your own natural resilient leadership that we've done a lot to squish because we've been so planned and focused. So we wanted to give you a map of resiliency.
So here the way this works is a while back, maybe January, February, there was a normal. You were doing what you normally did. You probably had a business. Maybe you had challenges with your business, but you'd been doing that for a while. So you kind of knew that was the normal. And when we say chaos, what creates chaos is when any kind of foreign elements come into play, something different than the status quo. So we could all probably agree whether you think COVID-19 is true or not true, whatever you think about it, it happened. It suddenly was a foreign element that arrived on our screen. It happened, and it arrived at different times, for different businesses, different people. But there was also shelter in place, directives that came up. What are you going to do? You're going to have to work remotely. You have to figure out how you're going to navigate this. People, like, we work with companies that won't use Zoom. We love Zoom. Some companies don't love Zoom. So we were having to learn all these different mediums. But all these foreign elements, and what happens when a foreign element comes into a status quo, a normal, is it creates chaos. That's basically the gist of, you know, a lot of times people face this when they face an illness or a health crisis.
Or a divorce.
A divorce. Any of those things would trigger that chaos. But we not only went on at an individual level, we went on a state level, a country level, a global level. So a tremendous amount of chaos.
And now we're looking to do Montana, we're going through reentry. And this is where you really have a choice. So many, I know many people have said that I coach, I just wanted to get back to normal. Can I just, and that's one choice, but we think it's actually going to be, it's not going to be normal.
I don't think, I don't even know if you could get back to normal, but you might be able to do some things like you used to, but likely that's actually not going to take you back to quite the same status quo you had before, and probably not the healthiest way. But to actually reinvent yourself takes a certain level of discipline and choice, because, you know, it could be easy to get into the exact same patterns you did before. And the only problem is those same patterns may not create the results you need in this new climate.
So we're going to talk about being observant, courageous, creating connection and collaboration, and leaning into yes, what's working. So just a little bit about me. Many of you know me, but some don't. I'm a, gosh, I don't even know where to start there.
Go with the lines.
I have an MBA, and I used to work at a big consulting firm, Arthur Andersen. And until I actually got blamed for a project when I didn't speak up. And so I got passionate about learning how to speak up and helping women speak up in, especially when you're dealing with power, because that's often what we don't do, or a relationship. I'm also an Olympian. I was in the 1988 Olympic Games. I was a rower. And really this leadership coach I really want, and my whole process has been, how do I lead in my life? How do I take more empowering steps? Because I was an accommodator. I wanted to keep everything smooth, not rock the boat, because I had an Army colonel dad that was a really hard nose. And so that's how I survived. And so my job, and what has created more and more opportunities for me in my life, is learning how to speak up. And that's what I'm passionate about helping women do.
So a little bit about me. I'm a relationship and leadership coach. But probably the thing that really gets, you know, what I'm passionate about is crisis, conflict, and change. And a lot of that came because of my own experience in my 20s when I had an advanced cancer process, and thought that my medical team was going to give me the path forward. And what happened was 9 months into a very aggressive treatment, I got the news that the treatment wasn't working and they didn't have any alternatives. And so they said to me at that point, you have between 3 to 6 months to live. And it really was like, it took my breath away. Like, no, that can't be, that doesn't work. And I remember walking out of there kind of like, well, what do I do now? And so I started to explore, does anybody have an answer? And what I discovered, I called, you know, I refer to it now as Project Susan. And I had non-traditional doctors, I had spiritualists, I had psychologists, dietitians. The response I got was there were a lot of people who thought they had ideas. The only difficulty for me was none of them really appreciated each other. As a matter of fact, my medical team was very upset that I was doing something non-traditional, the vice versa. They had a lot of experts, but no one who wanted to talk to each other. So, and I realized even during this pandemic, it's been so much like going back to that time. Like, I'm listening to people talk about, this is how we have to say, this is what we have to do. This is what we have to do. And it reminds me so much of what happened to me in my own health crisis. Only this time I'm not alone. I've got a lot of other people who are struggling with all the same questions. But I came out of that really convinced that where we get to newness and creativity and innovation and transformation is when we lean into those things, and not just, plan 10 years out, but actually like, okay, I'm in this moment. I don't know whether I'm going to live or die, but I am living, so I'm going to fully live. And I really realized in this pandemic, that's kind of how I have to do this too, for very different reasons. I can't say 10 years from now, what's my business going to be like? I have to figure out, okay, I don't know
this month.
Yeah, you know.
What's this month going to look like? And maybe next month.
And it is different. And yet at the same time, that is somehow what I think resilience really is. So at first I consider myself now probably a resilience coach in addition to these other things.
That's a good name. That's a good one, huh? And this is just a little bit about who we are. We have 2 books, The Beauty of Conflict for Business Teams and The Beauty of Conflict for Couples, which we just released this past year. And I have to let you know that picture down on the bottom right. I went to the Oscars this February, right before the pandemic. Oh my God, I got to walk on the red carpet. And we do Dancing by the Fire workshops and Find Your Mojo. Susan's an Equus coach. So that's just a little bit about our lives.
You can tell though, I am not the one who usually does the makeup. I would not ever be on a runway. And she is, you know, I think she'd probably prefer not to be on one of those big fat tire bikes.
No, I would not. That's not me next to her. I'm not biking. Got to tell you that much. And just we have a podcast, and we've had a lot of great press with our couples book. So we were on NBC and Today's Show, and one of the things we realized, because we've been focusing on conflict, really in a team setting, helping teams develop trust and deal with conflict, and then get to better strategic results. What happened is all this uncertainty, what happens in conflict is you're facing uncertainty. So all the tools that we use to help people deal with conflict are what are helping us and our clients deal with this level of uncertainty.
So the thing about this is that there is no one expert or leader who will give us the real. Yeah, just like there was no medical physician that was the right one, or spiritual, whatever. But there were a lot of experts. And I often talk to people about, you know, the difference between leadership and a leader is leadership actually involves being able to pull upon a number of different expert opinions and pull them together. And that's what we're being called to do right now. Lead in our community, in our lives, in our business. We're not the experts. We may I mean, some people here might be experts. I don't mean to, but I don't think of myself like that. But I do think I can pull things together to figure out a way to keep going forward.
Because there's no one health person that's worked through this, or a business person, or a politician. So we do have to work together and not divide, because ultimately we all want the same thing. We want safety in our health, and we want a thriving economy. And working together is how we're going to create that.
I tell you, I don't know about you. I'd love to hear in the chat, but I mean, I keep wanting to find that leader, and I will argument, you know, I get very passionate about, I think Steve Bullock is right, or I think Governor Cuomo, or I think Trump, whoever it is, only so that I can feel reassured that someone is right about this. And then I realize no one is right. And actually, I probably have to keep coming back to me, but that feels so uncomfortable sometimes, because I want someone to tell me the answer.
Please tell me. Please tell me the answer.
Yeah.
And we do think being a resilient leadership is about, you need to be able to take in, sort, and find what fits best for you from the inside out without certainty, and go forward and learn and focus on what's working and let go of what's not. But it has more churn in it, because we're learning how to deal with this. And this is just, I imagine some of you have seen this circle of control, circle of concern. We all have things that we're concerned about. Politics, it should actually say the pandemic, not disasters, but culture, what other people are doing, or whether they're wearing masks or not.
There are disasters, and then you know, I actually now am like, okay, so what happens if we have a wildfire season in addition to a pandemic?
Yeah,
you know,
I know.
It's interesting. Things do keep happening. So you know, but that's the circle of concern.
Circle of concern, and then our circle of control, which is really what we think, feel, and want, and what we do, and how we relate to other people. The problem is we tend to focus on our circle of concern, and when we do, our circle of influence actually shrinks, what we can actually influence, because we're trying to control what's outside versus controlling what's inside and immediately related to us. So we really want to encourage you to focus on what's happening inside and your direct relationships as to increase your level of influence during this time of uncertainty. So we have another question.
All right.
Because we've been talking a lot. And if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. But we want to know, under stress, do you tend to take action, like I'm just going to make things happen? Or do you tend to focus on, hey, I want to make sure everybody's okay. I want to create this harmony in my relationships. Or 3, do you, I'm just going to focus on something completely different, like build a garden or do something else until the stress goes away. So put 1, 2, or 3 in the chat. Even if you do all 3 of them, you can say how you do them, but we'd love to see what your tendency is under stress. Let's see, they'd be coming in.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I'm putting something in here. Okay.
1, take action.
Yeah. We got some action takers. 3 and 1. So go
3 and
focus
1
on something else. Mostly 1 but a little dash of each. Okay. 2. All right.
3 and 1.
All right.
You.
Okay. So we got a lot of, it's interesting. We got a lot of 1s and 3s and a couple and a 2. But 3 seems to be the most dominant. Now,
3 and 1 seems to take action.
Taking action.
That might be your dominant style. Go do something else. Take a bike ride.
Hey.
So in all 3, we think you actually need to balance. We're going to tie these back in. There's what's going on inside of you, your relationships, and your business.
And people who are focused there often, they will take action because that's actually going to be
when they're focused on the me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then the people that are focused on the we are all the relationship, and then the business. What do I need to do? I'm going to focus on something else to make something happen. So the me, we actually think, so all you action takers, this is going to be a big ask. Rather than take action, which is my preference, like make things happen, is to actually be observant, to actually slow down, and rather than plan and take action, be observant of what's happening inside of you, not trying to control your outsides, but what are you thinking, feeling, and wanting? And also observant of the environment, but without acting.
This is one of the things that has become so profound for me in the work with horses that I get to do, because now this is true in nature in general. Like we just recently released a podcast with Robin Kelson, who is kind of an expert in the area of resiliency and looks at whole ecosystems in nature for what has over time been resilient. And one of the things she talks about is how there's all sorts of species in nature that just come back, have more resilience than we have, ecosystems that stay alive. And horses are one of those. I mean, a lot of people don't know this, but when a horse has been domesticated or has been in trauma, if they get back into a herd, they are the fastest species to go back to their feral natural state. In other words, they know how to return quickly to being able to rely and be on the herd. And in nature, nature's no species is really looking out, planning 10 years ahead. We are one of the youngest species on the planet, and we have a neocortex that allows us to plan. But sometimes that's not, unless it's connected to everything else, it's not our best resource.
Actually, the prefrontal cortex is the newest part of our system. Newest part, and it thinks it's the oldest and has all the answers. And when we just use our head, we are missing so much information in our bodies and our hearts and our souls.
So we really do want to emphasize this idea that to step back, observe, notice. Don't, right now is maybe not the time for big planning. And I'm getting the clock, which means I need to plan a little better for the rest of our time. So, woo, we got it.
So what gets in the way is actually our reaction. And so in stress, when there's tension and uncertainty, we go to a stress state and it puts us in a fight, flight, or freeze. And that actually literally, it narrows our actual eye focus. We see less. It drains our brain of blood and we're actually dumber. And this is when we're trying to make all those decisions in a meeting with our spouse, when we're having a stressful, when we're, oh my gosh, I've got to do something to help my business. And we're not thinking straight. We're literally not thinking straight. And this is when we have all these, we have the least resources internally. And
although we usually think we're great.
Yeah.
We got a lot of adrenaline pumping
and,
but it's not necessarily the best time to make that call.
Adrenaline is the energy hormone. So we think we've got to take action, but your brain is actually lying to you. And so we want to give you tools to help regulate, to bring you down that curve.
So in this case, the first one is the simple, most basic resource we have, breathe. And we're not just talking about, our usual life support breath. We are talking about taking a deeper, fuller breath, noticing, where is it easy for you to inhale? Where is it more difficult? Not making it wrong, but paying much more attention to your breath. And really, in this case, paying more attention to your exhale, not just your inhale.
Making it a longer exhale. The other thing is simple, and you can do this right now. Maybe not the biker there that's biking along listening to us.
Motorcycle. I love it.
But feel your feet, maybe wiggle your toes and swipe your feet, and put your, also even notice your sit bones on the seat, and just bring your awareness, like you could feel them getting heavier. And what this is doing is, if you just keep focusing on your feet, it's bringing your energy down into your body, which your body is a source of information. The same breath does the same thing. It gets us out of just this and energizes more information, ancient information.
Well, that was one of the pieces about resiliency. We have a lot of systems in our body and our being that are much more ancient and well-versed and interconnected than this. But not that this can't be helpful.
And this is our dance break, but I can't flip and get to the music playing again.
But we do think why we brought the music on at the beginning was to remind you that sometimes it's just a good idea to get up and dance, move a little bit. And
because it will totally shift your energy.
We can make it seem like we have a music.
And the other thing, we're not going to go into this in detail, but what I was saying to your subconscious brain actually lies to you. And you can actually probably write down the scary thoughts that you think repeatedly. I'm not going to have enough clients. I'm not going to get enough money. People aren't going to like me. I'm going to fail. Whatever. They're not actually new thoughts. Your brain just keeps recycling them, but you don't need to actually keep listening to them. You can intervene on your own behalf, because you'll shift your reactions. And this is a lot of what we do in coaching, is help people look at how are your limiting thoughts creating your reality, because it's not helpful.
So when you can do that, and keeping in mind that when you've gone up into that kind of low resource place, it actually does take 2 minutes to drop back down in. Sometimes that is really hard to talk to business people about. Taking 2 minutes to breathe.
Seems like a really long time.
2 minutes to dance, 2 minutes to reflect, especially between Zoom meetings or whatever you're doing all day. And really, it could be hugely helpful if you do. Yeah. So, because you get to a more relaxed, creative, expanded thinking.
Yeah, your brain actually floods with blood because you're actually responding from a whole system, not just your prefrontal cortex. So you feel relaxed, confident, creative, and you see more options. You literally take other things into account that you weren't in that stress, take action sort of state.
I cannot. I just, because I keep seeing Ariel up there. Is that who's doing the biking? That is so cool. I keep looking over there and like, oh, wow, she's on her bike. That's pretty amazing. All right. So,
Susan, that's because you love to bike.
I know. For somebody else, they might be thinking, what is bike? But yeah.
We can't hear you, Ariel, I think because you're mute, but we do see you.
Yes. All right.
So we're talking about the we and this idea of collaborating, being able to work with different people, different points of view. And often there's conflict in relationship. A coworker ranted again about politics and has a completely opposite view that you do. Or maybe a coworker was mean and you get off the call and you're just burst into tears. Or your boss dominated the conversation. Or you don't know who to believe and everyone has different stories. All of these create conflict inside of us.
These are just a few we've heard. If there's any particularly that you want to share and add to the chat, that's great.
And 3 was the biggest one, not 2. So we'll go through this a little bit more quickly.
Well, the whole thing here, though, is that 9 times out of 10, what people get caught in is right and wrong. And the reason we get caught in right and wrong right now is because we have so much of a desire to get to some sort of certainty, stability, and security. And so it really becomes, that's why we think it's so important to learn how to tolerate the uncertainty, because that is going to allow us to kind of potentially shift out of this right-wrong thinking.
Because when I want an answer, and anybody who's mean is really feeling pretty insecure at that point because they want a right answer. And we all put together the world differently, and all we see is what people say and do. And often people don't want to have the conversation because, well, I don't want to rock the boat. I've tried already. I know what they'll say. I can't deal with their negative energy.
And again, we'd love to hear from you if there's something that you say to yourself that stops you from having the conversation or speaking up when you know this is not working for me.
I can't deal with their reaction. Maybe they'll retaliate. These are some of the things we've heard in the past, but we'd love to hear from you what stops you moving forward in that.
Now, we believe the reason why you want to speak up is it will bring you clarity and alignment. And if you don't speak up, you're going to end up feeling resentful or you're going to feel like a victim. And so a lot of times, I was just listening to a great podcast with Harriet Lerner, who was talking about, she wrote a book about apology, but I also think it has to do with when people think they've been disrespected. And what she said was, 9 times out of 10 people are, and we talk about this, when respect has been broken, people, it's like the air has gone out of the room. And the thing that really you have to do, if you feel like that's happened to you, the key isn't to make the other person wrong. That's what happens when you've built up too much resentment.
And it's where we want to go.
Yeah.
They need to apologize.
But what you need to speak up for you, so you can be in your own integrity and clarity, and say something succinct and short, because if you're talking to somebody who's feeling uncomfortable, you don't want to have a long litany. You want to have one thing to say, because otherwise they're just going to get defensive. You want to make it, you don't want to blame. You want to stand in your assertion, like stand in what was true for you. And then also you don't want to have a litany of crimes. This is another thing people do, like everything they did wrong, versus really, this is how I felt. I don't know, like instead of saying, you just interrupted me 10 times and if I said, I don't know if you meant to interrupt me, but I didn't think I got to say much. And I ended up feeling quite silenced in that. And so I want to bring it up because it's important for me to come forward. But in all of that, I'm not talking about what the other person did or didn't do right or wrong. And it doesn't mean you're going to change the other person, but it means you may have a chance to be present and available for a different outcome.
And we do think this takes courage, vulnerability, and curiosity. The vulnerability to go ahead and have that conversation and say, hey, when this happened, this is how I felt. This is why it was important to me.
And we did have someone say, why they don't is because they think they'll offend someone. And the reality is, so often when we speak up, we are coming from our own place of, like, either by then we're already mad or something's already happened, and we say it in a way that doesn't work, versus, okay, let me just talk about me. I don't know if this fits for you, and check it out. Be more tentative, be relational in it, not just right or,
because we're meaning-making machines. Data comes in, what we hear and what we see, and it goes through our own personal filter, which deletes, distorts, and generalizes information, and out pops a story, our own story, and then we have a feeling. And we don't recognize we're creating these stories. And so what we want you to do is what Susan was saying, is check out your story. I heard you say this. I saw this. My story is you don't respect me, and I want to check out. Do you agree or disagree? But there's a lot of room in that for the person to say, no, there's a versus you're wrong. You clearly don't respect me.
Now, the thing to remember here is it's hard enough for me to recognize how I put the world together, all those pieces. I may not realize I have a strong personal filter. I may not know how I got to my story. So that's a lot of work in and of itself. That's why self-awareness is so challenging. But then to also be able to assume that I could figure out how she put the world together, not going to happen. Mm-hmm. And so that's why it becomes so important to suspend my kind of sureness, my rightfulness, and talk about what I can be clear about, which is me, and then check out what fits for you, what doesn't.
And then be curious, not so convinced that, oh, I know what they're going to say, or sure they said that, but actually hold and be interested and reflect back what you're hearing. Listen without thinking you have to change or agree, and reflect back the gist, both the content and the emotional tone. And that goes a long way for reducing your own defensiveness. And if the other person is defensive, taking some time to reflect back, because we're often jumping in so quickly, this really helps slow things down. Now we have a little gift for you, because we're going through this really quickly, how to have tough conversations at work. It's a little workbook. So how this works is if you text that number 406-350-7691 and put your name and your email, just text that in. And what's going to happen is you're going to get a reply. And if you just put the word beauty, then this little workbook, which is about 15 pages, and it'll help you prepare for a tough conversation. It'll come to your email box. And it gives kind of the frame of this. It goes into more details, but it will help you prepare to have a tough conversation and support you in increasing your influence. Do you want to do the breakout now? I think we should.
About.
We want to actually, we want to see, I don't know if Erica's on, if we could do.
Can you go forward just one more little bit? Because I think this will be, we do want to bring this piece in. Then we want to invite you guys to do something. So we do think the old paradigm, at least a lot of people that I've coached and talked to in the old world, always felt like I've got to do it all. I'm the leader. I'm supposed to know the answer. I got to work even harder. I got to figure out the answer. And we think that that is, first off, it's not going to work. And it's pretty much an exhausting paradigm. And we really do believe this new paradigm is going to involve, well, it's probably a lie, but yes.
But our stress brain convinces us it's true.
And what we really need to do now more than ever is build bridges and collaborate. Meaning, you know, in business, keep going. In business, we used to have a lot of desire we had to figure out who are our competitors? How are we going to win this? How are we going to, and now, you know, boy, we can't be worried about our competitors. We've all been in this situation together. So we need to worry about how can we connect? How can we collaborate? How can we build networks and shift out of this place of being more isolated and in separation? So we want to consider new ways of we want you to think about new ways of doing business with your own team, with your community, with your competitors, and not think about this from the standpoint of I've got to know the answer, but to actually enjoy the richness of talking to other people who might be struggling with some of the same things and figuring out, oh, what might we be able to do differently?
Because we haven't figured it out. You're not going to figure it out unless you have the conversation and think outside the box and in really broad ways. And even asking other people, why is this so important to you that you get to market or you do this? To try to understand at a deeper level, not just the top line, but a deeper level, what's driving them. Now, so this is a breakout.
Yes. Okay.
I'm hoping we can do breakouts. We just wanted to, what ways could you collaborate in your business or in your community, thinking outside the box? Any kind of closing comments from from the conversations?
Oh yeah. We had some microphone issues that threw us off a little bit, but we got.
I'm just going to see, just because I know we're close to time and I want to keep our time contract.
I was amazed though to hear about somebody who's helping out a parent who's 103. I was just impressed by the age. Goodness. And they still do day trading in the morning. That, you know, the 103. Yeah.
Oh my.
You know, so that was
I mean, in our breakout, what I heard is, you know, be of service and learn through that as to, like, service may not be what's going to bring you money, but it will bring you connection and it'll bring you from your insides out and you'll learn what needs to happen next. That was kind of the takeaway I heard in our group.
We discussed how quickly we can adapt to new challenges. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, even one thing that came up was this feeling of like, I just started my business in February.
Yes, somebody else said that.
And then it's gone. Mm-hmm. And that was I know for me, I started my Equiscope work with a big leadership thing that I was going to do. And all of a sudden it was gone. So that can be a bit of a devastating and really does, if you have support and people you can talk to, gives you a chance to, so what do I do now? So,
and it's important to feel your feelings of grief about what you've lost so that you can actually regain your energy and go forward. That feeling of the feelings is powerful. We talk about that in our coaching. Mm-hmm. And so our kind of what we want to leave you with is there is no one answer, but be observant, settle yourself before you take action, even though you actionizers really want to do things. And access your courage, your vulnerability and curiosity. Check out your stories and listen. And then think outside the box of collaborating. And I would put and be of service. How can you be of service? And ask the magic question, why is this so important to you? So those are kind of our key takeaways. Any Q&A, comments?
Yes.
Cheers that you want to give?
I'm looking. But I don't know that we have any questions, but we would love, you know, you have our email there. We would love to hear from you, and feel free to reach out, and because we, you know, this is how we found our way through this.
We are being of service and
we had, you know, it's funny, we really wanted to do more in Montana and be here more. And now we've gotten the chance, like we actually have this big garden now that we're responsible for.
We've never gardened in our lives. Never.
And I, you know, and I'm more, and I know for me, I found myself more committed than ever to my community, to the connections I have in the community, and how can I support and help people, because I know that eventually will help me get through this. So keeping that in mind, we are grateful to have had the chance to come and be a part of this with you guys.
Yeah.
So
sweet.
yes.
Okay, I'll stop the share.
Okay, then we get on to.
Did I stop the share?
You did.
Okay, thank you.
We're just seeing the faces.
A little technically challenged.
So in the chat, we're just getting lots of thank yous from folks, and I'll just echo that. Thank you so much, Susan. And
Absolutely.
Yes.
for being willing to share with us and facilitate. And thanks also to Heather and Tracy.
Tracy,
Great Falls, for
Yes.
making this happen and for making all kinds of wonderful things happen in Great Falls.
Yes, thank you, Tracy, for the good idea.
that's cool.
And I just wanted to invite people, if you are interested in connecting more in settings like this, you can always find more information both on our Facebook, on Powerhouse Montana Facebook, and then on our website, powerhousemt.org. And a lot of the larger communities in Montana have their own little Powerhouse groups on Facebook too. So for instance, you could look, if you're in Great Falls, there's an actual Powerhouse Great Falls Facebook group that you can connect with as well. And right now we are trying to figure out what comes next for us too, of course, as far as, you know, in the past, we were always able to connect people in person in different communities, as well as through the online website and Facebook. And right now we've been trying to do more of this, the webinars and sharing online, so we can socially distance and still connect. And so for, you know, for the foreseeable future, probably for at least the next month or two, we'll continue to be offering a couple of sessions a month that anybody can join. Some will be hosted by our different community groups. Some will be hosted just by the Women's Foundation. But we'd invite you to go ahead and connect with us on Facebook, and then you'll hear about those as they come up. So thanks, everybody. Thanks.
And please reach out if you haven't friended us on Facebook, Chris Marie Campbell and Susan Clark and Thrive and LinkedIn.
You can always join us for the new morning show at 10 a.m. on I don't know how much longer it'll be happening. It's, you know.
I would so recommend that. It's just a moment. I never seem to catch the live vision of it, right?
Oh, that's true.
Through the day, I'll go on Facebook to do a post or something, and it will pop up, and I watch it, and it's just this moment of like, what they run from 5 to 10-ish minutes, right? And it's just it's a good break. They always start with this nice little dance routine that gets me moving a little bit. And so I highly recommend that you guys follow Thrive and join their new morning show. I personally, you guys could continue it forever. You know.
We're on day 73.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, wow.
We missed one day.
One day.
You know?
I know. Commitment.
Wow.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and we'll follow up with a little email too, and we'll ask for your thoughts and ideas. And if there are things that you would love for us to focus on in some of these gatherings and conversations, we'd love to hear those from you as well. And thank you for being those people who are out there leading Montana and getting us all through it. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
All right. Bye.